So let me just be the first to say welcome to another Bioregional Activators call. All of you have been on previous calls except for Grace, who has just graced us with her presence. I'm a bad punster, Grace. I hope that's okay. There's no such thing as a good punster, right? Lowbrow humor is a high art. What we want to do today is have a really quick check-in. So we'd like to do one of those a word or phrase check-ins so we can be fairly fast. And that's really because we have a lot of ground to cover. And we want to really hold space to be really productive today. And so the agenda today is going to be that we're going to start off with a little quick check-in. Then Penny is going to walk us through some of the, I would say, administrative challenges and proposed solutions as we're growing in complexity and as we're overwhelming ourselves with information flow and too many things happening in parallel to know what the heck is going on. And so Penny will talk a little bit about that. Then we're going to ask Benji to share some of the things he's hosting in the next 2 weeks so that you can feel the context of things you can participate in if you like, that are embedded within bioregional catalysts that are very connected to the work we're doing here. And then I will share about the whirlwind of travel that Penny and I are doing in the next 2 months. And during that time, we'll invite Brian, if you would like, to share a little bit about why part of that agenda includes going to visit Brian and Susan in Toronto and what we may be doing there. And we feel like all of this is to build up to what we think is going to be, I would say, the narrative climax for today, because there are actually way too many things going on for us to talk about everything. But what I want to bring us to is after these almost like housekeeping details of how do we administer ourselves, what are you invited into next, and generally what's coming up in the next 2 months, is I want to spend just a few minutes talking about how Penny and I are understanding the planetary context in the year 2023 and what we feel like we need to accomplish in the next 13 months, basically, by the end of 2023, that we see these next 2 months building toward, and why we believe we don't have any time to waste. And so we need to go big or go home. And so, I want to give that context and then invite us to have discussion about everything that happened in that whole sequence. So that's the basic agenda I propose for today. And I'd say go big and come home, right? Like bring us back to the earth, man. Let's go back to mama. Mama's waiting for us. So I'd love to just do a really quick check-in so that we can get to this rather dense agenda. And so the check-in is just a word or phrase and then pass it forward about how you're doing. And so I will start. I'm overwhelmed and stressed and also excited. And then I'll pass it to Benji.
Thank you, Joe. I am feeling so much energy right now from the upcoming meeting with Paonia, Carbondale, now Toronto's in the conversation. Barichara's here, Cowichan's here. This is just getting really exciting. So, and I'll pass it on to Penny. You're next to me.
I'm also feeling the variety. I'm feeling some sadness and I'm feeling some excitement and stimulation. And so lots of different levels. I will pass to Mitty.
Thanks, Penny. I am feeling all the feelings in the field, holding space and listening. And I will pass to Stephen.
Thanks, Mitty. I'm feeling anticipation and excitement and a little apprehension. I'm making plans to return to Colorado on the 9th. And next week, my new friend, Erica from Earth Regenerators community, we've been spending time getting to know each other here in Barichara. We're going to spend 3 days in Bucaramanga and get to know the city a little bit before we go our separate ways. And so I'm preparing for changes. And I will pass to Gail.
For a second, I was waiting for which Gail, but the other one's not here. I'm also like you, Joe. I'm stressed and overwhelmed, but also making sure that I make time for the important work. Because if I don't make the time, all the other stuff pushes it away. And it's like, can't let that happen. All right, I will pass it to Claire.
Yeah, I'm pretty energized from having spent the last 5 hours last night in a snowstorm with Darren and his friend Darren Zoll, who's here, and his friend Sean Anderson in a car trying to get to a meeting in Cowichan that we had to turn around and come back from because the meeting was cancelled and the snowstorm gridlocked everyone, but we had an amazing time talking about everything that we're talking about right now. So I will pass to, actually I'll pass to Darren.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I'm feeling energized from just connecting with Claire and spending a couple of days with her over the past week. And yeah, also just kind of feeling pulled, like I'm just kind of, you know, gravitating towards certain things and, you know, things are just happening and I'm just kind of riding the wave. And I will pass it to Jan. Jan Hendrik.
Yes. I think excited, but also anxious describes my state of mind. I'm passing it to guess who, Jan.
Great, we got it worked out this week. Yeah, I feel alive and engaged and present and curious and open and can feel the currents of overwhelm here and other places. That's just kind of part of the field in the world these days. And I will pass it to Mikhail.
Hi everyone, Mikkel here. I'm grateful and thankful that we can connect online like this. So thank you all very much. I will pass to Grace.
Yeah, I'm Grace. I just came back from raking the leaves and being conscious of like, I'm doing this for the neighbors. Like the ground really doesn't want me to do that. So really kind of sinking into that, like, but if I didn't do it, what would the neighbors say? I'm passing to Sev.
Hey everyone. I woke up feeling pretty sleepy this morning, but after a couple of espressos, I'm feeling great. And yeah, I'm feeling determined and content. I will pass it. Sorry, I just jumped in, so I don't know who's all gone. Joe, would you mind picking someone who hasn't?
Yeah, pass it forward to Roberta.
Good morning. I'm feeling, I have been feeling really overwhelmed after 5 months of travel and feeling like my life was a mess. And I've been doing a lot of clearing and refocusing and reestablishing rituals. So that's feeling like it's getting better. And that's kind of opened me more into the feeling of the potential coming out of the overwhelm. And I'll pick Ricardo.
Good morning, everyone. Well, I feel grateful to be here and also curious. It's been such a great ride this year. Well, just hoping to connect with this bioregional regeneration. I'm driving, so I need some help. So Joe,
yeah, I'll pass it forward to Brian.
Thanks.
Yeah, feeling excited about embracing the full potential of Joe and Penny's visit to us here in the greater Toronto bioregion. And I will pass it to Darina.
Hey, hi everyone, nice to see you. I know you cannot see me because I'm a bit sick, so yeah. I'm very grateful for being here and very excited to weave and see what we can do in different bioregions. I pass it to Will.
Hey, I'm Will. It is really cold, and my dog would like it's I don't know 20 degrees or something, and my dog would just go on a walk. And I don't know, I feel like harried or whatever. I just feel like I'm tired of having to be responsible for other people and animals all the time. But I guess I'm also blessed and privileged, and sometimes question our sanity too. Like sometimes it feels like we are actually, going to that this is all going to be worthwhile and transformative, and sometimes it feels insane. Who else hasn't talked? Are
Jonathan.
there a lot of them? Jonathan.
Well, Victoria and I are A-OK here in Rochester and buttoned down for the winter. So how about Day? Pass it along to you. You can unmute.
Yeah, Day, if you're there, we're just checking in to say how we're doing. And if you're not able to join in, then I think Mitty may be the only one who hasn't gone. Or Mitty, did you go during the opening round or before? I'm confused now.
I went after Penny, thanks,
Oh,
Joe.
you did? Okay. I got confused because I just liked hearing your voice again. Well, I guess maybe Day isn't able to check in. But so I love having this variety of, look at how many of us are here. I can see us through the lens of many worlds coming together because I see different people from different places gathering today, and it just makes me feel really good. No, Mikhail did go, but yeah, I think everyone's gone. And what I'd love to do now is to pass it over to Penny to share some of how we want to start clarifying and reorganizing our structures so that we can hold the complexity of what's happening. So Penny, I pass it over to you.
Thanks. Yeah, I am excited to see all these different people here today. This is great. I'm gonna change to gallery view so I can see myself in the group. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the Telegram group and some ideas we're having for going forward with that. So as I'm sure you've all seen, it's getting very busy in the Telegram group. So what we're thinking to do is to change that group into just like a updates and announcements group. And then, so basically we would just post our updates and events and so forth in there. And then if any of you wanted to post like discussion topics, like the things that have been coming up there, you could do that in our Mighty Networks. Or you could also, if somebody wants to open another group where people who like to do that kind of discussion want to be, then that would be great. One of you could open another group and add people who want to be a part of that. So that's our suggestion for that aspect. And then in the future, in January, we'll be talking about this where we're going to be formally starting these work groups that we've been talking about. Then probably we'll have Telegram groups for just those workflows so that we could be focused inside those groups. And then also I've been noticing in that group that people are wanting to start to share resources. So I wanted to offer a Google Drive that we have related to our an account we opened for Refi Barichara in Google. So if any of you want to start using that for sharing resources, you can let me know and I can help organize that. And the other thing is this group that we started talking about last week with Antonio, who's going to help lead what he's calling the Bioregional Blockchain group. That group, I'm thinking, is probably going to start formally in January when Joe and I are back from all of our travels, and we can really start doing that in earnest in January. I don't think Antonio's here today, so that's probably all I'll say about that, and Joe's going to talk about the other workflow. So I think that's it. And I just want to pause though and see if this all feels good to everybody or if anyone has any concerns about or questions about that. Roberta?
Yeah, quick question. When you said groups, did you mean groups inside of the Mighty Network site where you just form a new group or a team for like a particular discussion
Oh.
thread?
Well, I was thinking more like a post. You can do a post with the topic or hashtag, like a general topic, a general discussion. And then in the comment thread, that's where people can discuss between each other. So that happens a lot on ER, which is a nice way to kind of contain a discussion.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, so.
Yeah, well, you can also form your own groups. That's why I was just wondering.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, and if you wanted to do that, just let me know and I can help get you set up in a group inside the Mighty Network.
Yeah, it would be helpful. I've been really struggling with Telegram, and it would be helpful to have one versus 2 or 3 places where things are going on. Kind of cross links or whatever. Yes, but thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that Grace had her hand up and then Gail. So Grace. Oh, you're muted.
You'd mentioned for the working teams using Telegram. I would suggest using Mighty Networks if you're going to use Mighty Networks. It has a crews feature, and you can create your own crew. In Telegram, you'll lose control of who's in what list, whereas in Mighty Networks, you guys as the administrator will have everybody's emails, and you'll still be able to admit and release people. And so it's just a much better structure for Telegram. There are other structures, and I think that that's a deeper conversation than we want to go into here. But if you're using Mighty Networks, that's much better for the teams than trying to, than multiple Telegram groups. You'll never have control over that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Grace. Gail?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I apologize. I've not been able to come to the last couple of meetings because I was just swamped and I had to work. So what are these working groups? Are they by bioregion or just in like 1 or 2 sentences? What are the working groups?
Joe, do you want to do that
Yeah,
part? Since
yeah.
you're really
I'll
going
just
through that
say
anyway?
we've identified 3 key workflows that we're holding and maintaining at the moment. One of them is the on-the-ground community supports, like the way that Benji is helping us hold dynamic relationships with Paonia and Carbondale in Colorado. So there's a workflow that is Penny, Benji, and myself at the moment, learning how to, creating the pattern level of how to do that. A second workflow that's going to be really important is creating a governance and funding collaboration system. This is where we talk about things like liquidity pools and collaborative finance and how the governance works and things like this. And this is currently being focused on the bioregional blockchain language. Well, that's the language that Antonio uses, which is why Penny used finger quotes for it. So to say there will be a group of people gathering that want to design and build some of those multi-flow systems where we basically have multiple ways of gathering and allocating funds. So there will be a work group that focuses on that. And then a third that's going to become really important is for the tool builders who are building tools that are focused at the project level within a bioregion, for them to have coherent ways to share and co-create with each other to be able to bridge from one bioregion to another. And so these are 3 key workflows that we see at the moment that we're going to be forming work groups and sustained actions around. And if there are no other questions, Midi, please.
The online on-ground interface, where does that naturally sit? In which group?
That's the one that I'm currently calling the community supports or the on-the-ground community supports. It just currently is the way Benji's using bioregional catalysts, which I'm about to pass to him to speak about, and the way Penny and I are engaging landscapes. Benji went with us to engage these landscapes in Colorado, whereas he may not go with us to Toronto. So there's some nuance and complexity that's still clarifying about that, but it's that body of work, which is going to become probably the most important work of this network, but it'll complexify and bring in more people over time. For now, I'd love to pass it to Benji to share just what's happening in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So what's happening in the Bioregional Catalyst is we're really turning our attention towards these two upcoming workshops in Paonia and Carbondale. So Carbondale the 10th, it's gonna be Saturday, December 10th, and then we're gonna be in Paonia again on the 11th, that next day on that Sunday. And so what we're doing is we're just experimenting. We're holding space for discussions, trying to find how we can develop some sustaining supports. And as Joe does so well, he articulated this just a moment ago, holding the dynamic relationships between on-the-ground groups and the virtual community. So we're using these upcoming workshops as some inspiration and some purpose to organize ourselves around. We're going to meet today. We're meeting actually in an hour and a half at 10 a.m. Mountain. We're going to meet on Saturday. We're going to meet and then next Wednesday. So that's the 30th, that's the 3rd, and that's the 7th. And in each of these sessions, we're going to be thinking about thinking actively about designing sustained support structures as we consider what's the intent for these workshops that are coming up. What do we want to achieve? And really broadly speaking, we're going to be exploring things like how can these spaces be places where bioregions can share their stories, share inspiration, explore challenges, voice their needs, and then really importantly, connect with one another as well as other regional allies. So that's where we're at. This is going to be a little bit of prototyping, but I think that just by getting people together, it's going to be really generative and we're going to learn a lot. So really excited for that. All are welcome. The events themselves can be found in the Earth Regenerators course or group. I think that's the category or the section called the Bioregional Catalyst. And I will post links to those 3 events in the chat here in just a moment. And Joe, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add.
Yeah, there's one thing I want to do is I want to briefly show you all a graphic I created to try to communicate something to Benji the other day. And when I show you this graphic, you'll see that this is like a rough sketch of how we think we're going to organize ourselves starting in January. But just so you can start to see that we already have a lot of different activities going on that are not visible to all of you because we don't have a coherent way of doing it yet. So we're designing a system. And I just want to briefly show you this graphic so that you'll be able to see, it's this graphic right here. So the idea for this graphic is that we're going to have the collaborative finance workflow, which is that bioregional blockchain work group, doing its thing, designing decentralized governance and finance systems for bioregions and for this network of bioregions. There's going to be an ongoing work of community support and community activation, which is what Benji was just talking about. And this is being done through a set of things. We have the Barichara updates call on Thursdays, which we've renamed Barichara and Beyond. We're going to introduce a Bioregional Activators newsletter, where once a week, we'll just share updates about all the activities, and any of you can request to have things included in those newsletters. And we're going to have this community call, which we think we may reduce in frequency to something like once or twice a month, because we'll be growing a number of other activities. And then at the same time, the Bioregional Catalysts, which is the place that Benji has been hosting these kinds of activities for more than a year within Earth Regenerators, is already doing teach-ins and sharing of story of place and the kinds of things he was just talking about. But also we think it'll be good for us to create a podcast. And we talked with our friend Tyler Fruby, who many of you know, who has done a couple of Earth Regenerators podcasts in the past, to ask if he would do a Bioregional Activators podcast, which would be a weekly podcast where any of you might be invited to go on and speak about your projects. We can invite people to tell their stories from the different bioregions. And then that would just be another part of kind of like a multimedia way of communicating what's happening. And then another thing that's happening is Penny and I are being supported to do all of our travel on Patreon. So we're going to be maintaining Patreon updates and Patreon live feeds to just connect with the people who are supporting us to do the work, to go out and activate bioregions, so that the people on the ground don't have to ever pay us to show up. And so, excuse me. So I just wanted you to see this, that this is like, we're starting to just see for ourselves that there's a lot going on and it's not quite clear how to organize it, but we're going to need a regular weekly schedule of when some things happen and when other things happen and different people doing things so that it can become coordinated. And so we're feeling into the complexity of what's already here to be able to hold this starting in the new year after we prototype this with the round of travel that's coming up. So Midi, I see, has her hand up, and then I'd like to share about our upcoming travel. So Midi, please.
I always love your graphics, Joe. You managed to distill, and that's beautiful. I just want to name that I feel somehow we need to hold within the complexity the relationship between bioregional activators and earth regenerators, and be very conscious that we're kind of holding that, even if we have no idea what it means yet. Because the worst thing in the world for me personally, and I think for the whole of society and for regeneration, would be if we end up being split and divisive unintentionally. So just holding that lightly. I was just sitting looking at the graphic thinking, you know, well, where obviously in bioregional catalysts, we have it implicit that that's ER, but also maybe on that right-hand side where the Patreon piece sits, there might be space for putting in Vivero and other pieces. So yeah.
Yeah, I just want to, before passing it to Benji, to just say that we're very mindfully holding the way this relates to the Earth Regenerators ecosystem, and also very mindfully protecting both sides. Because what we're doing is so fast and so disruptive that it would be harmful to ER if we were doing this with NER. And so in this sort of paradoxical way, we're protecting Earth Regenerators from the speed and intensity with which we're moving, while holding awareness that the integration is implicit in some ways, meaning that there will be integration in some ways. And one way we're holding that tension now is with bioregional catalysts, which is where I'll pass it back to Benji.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Thank you, Midi. Maybe you've already seen this, Midi, but I'm intending to be a bit of a bridge between the bioregional activators and Earth Regenerators through the bioregional catalysts. I'll be posting all events or most events in both places. And I think that there's also an interesting opportunity to really lead into campfires, which I think have gotten a little bit colder than they were in the past, but they've been held beautifully by RJ, by Pamela, by several people, you yourself. I think JP's been going regularly on Thursdays. But I think it's a great place to point people towards that are in bioregions that are just coming online. And we could naturally weave with people from ER that way.
Yeah, thank you, Benji. Sav.
So coming up end of next month, there's this emerging group with some of the driftless region folks who are talking about meeting up. We're going to have a meetup and just chat about plans for the future and think about organizing an event, like a Refi Spring event, very modeled after Refi Barichara for the spring for the driftless region. And so I just wanted to ask what type of, what should we be thinking about on how to weave and loop in with these groups and organizations as we meet in December. How can we be coordinated and leverage all the work that's already been done instead of trying to come up with things from scratch as we try to think about organizing that by region.
This is a great question, Sav. And I think that the immediate answer would be to communicate directly with Benji about how he is helping hold this interstitial tissue between bioregions and weave the driftless conversation in with it. So you might use some of the bioregional catalyst space, like use a couple of the sessions that Benji's already hosting, to just invite people who are doing this work in Carbondale to connect with the people that are in the driftless region as a way of helping to start stimulate those connections. And then you can also talk with any of us, with Penny, Benji, or myself, as we're learning how to hold this to make it coherent so that we can eventually know how to invite more people to do it. Because we're like in week 7 of doing this, right? So it's very new. We're still figuring out the patterning of it. But I have a feeling that by a month from now, we're going to know a lot more. And so simply by being in communication with Benji about the rhythm and these 2 times a week that he hosts bioregional catalyst calls. You can use some of that time to blend with these other communities and also get ideas for what you're doing, as well as one-on-one calls with Benji. You could just chat with him. And then with any of us, like I know you and I were gonna grab lunch together today. At least I hope we're still on for lunch, to just feel into that a bit more, because we want to try to template this enough that it's easier to know how to begin, and then quickly throw away the templates so it's not rigid or prescriptive. I just say, oh, here's an easy way to begin. Okay, now that you're beginning, here are others who have been doing this that might give you guidance. Now do it any way that works for you. And so that we just create these really organic relationship flows. And then we learn from them as they come on. Is that helpful enough for now, Sev? Cool. Then on to Jan, and then after that, if it's okay, I'd love to move into the next 2 months in the bigger picture, just so we have plenty of time to talk about that too. But Jan, please.
Yes, when we were in the Bioregional Explorer group the other day, just a few of us, and so we were talking a bit about the activation process and thinking, would there be a way that there could be a preliminary overview video made that you and Penny and possibly 1 or 2 people from the bioregion that you're potentially going to go to could make up as just a kind of an overview taster of what this is about, that kind of is, you know, a little bit like a simplified overview of what the workshop, you know, like going from collapse to what is a bioregion, why is a bioregion, and give people a sense of that, because I think that would help the preliminary engagement. And then from that, and I was thinking, even if it was done a little bit like we've done the learning journeys of, we have this, and then we locally work with conversations, and then that comes before a potential on the ground visit or something like that. So I'm looking at some stages of that could be kind of developmental. And I know this is like, you've got so much on your plate and this doesn't need to happen right away, but it feels as if it would be a good door opener. So I'm just planting that in while I've got the time to do it.
No, thank you, Jan. I think this is actually going to become really important. And one way that I already felt this as of yesterday is after our call with Brian and Susan, I posted on Twitter that we're going to Toronto sometime in January. It turns out a lot of people on Twitter that follow me are from Toronto. And so people are already starting to connect and be interested in it. And I'm linking them with Brian and Susan to say, connect with them, they're organizing it. But you can already feel how between now and January, we can invite people from Toronto into Bioregional Catalyst or other sort of like hosted and supported spaces to just make it easier for them. And actually have this support the design of what Brian and Susan are gonna prepare for us before we arrive. So I think this kind of proactive into the future and inviting people in and preparing the space before landing, I think is gonna really accelerate the process as we learn how to do this. So I think what you suggested is a wonderful idea. I'm not sure if we'll do it in the next couple of weeks, but we will do it certainly in the next couple of months. And with that, I would love to just very quickly show you all a map that I created that I think you all may have seen, but just in case you haven't, which is this map right here. And on this map, all you can see is that these are the bioregions we're already talking to in some active and structured way. See Barichara down in the bottom right, Powhatan Valley up there in the upper left, a cluster of 4 bioregions in the Central Rockies in Colorado, and now Toronto, and the Osa Peninsula down there in Costa Rica. I just wanted you to see these, to see that we're on week 7 and we're already in some kind of ongoing relationship with 8 bioregions. And so as we start to talk about what we're going to be doing in the next 2 months, and then how it relates to what's happening in the next year, I just wanted you to see on the map that we're already starting to create tendrils up and down the Americas in a way that is suggestive. And so what I want to do briefly is just share with you all what is actually going to happen in the next few weeks. And I'm going to make this short so we have plenty of time for discussion. And that is that this Friday, I'm getting on an airplane and flying to Colorado. And then on Monday, Penny and I are going to Utah to spend a couple of days in the desert, to go to some sacred sites and just have a little time to connect and be together because we haven't had really good time for ourselves in our relationship. We're going to come out of next week back into these 2 days of workshops and activity, sort of almost 3 days of workshops and activity in Paonia and Carbondale, where we're going to arrive into Carbondale on a Friday afternoon or Friday midday. We're already talking with the Basin Dow team about maybe meeting up that afternoon, as well as with the organizers of the morning workshop for Saturday to do any last minute planning and strategy. And then Saturday morning on December 10th, we're going to do a half-day workshop, probably similar to what we did in Paonia, where we'll introduce pro-social and introduce common lands landscape funds and landscape partnerships as a way of helping them begin to orient themselves. And then Saturday afternoon, we'll go over, cross the McClure Pass and go over to Paonia. And then on Sunday, we're going to do a combination of a morning workshop with people in the watershed of Paonia, because we're actually probably not going to be in Paonia. We may be in Crawford or one of the other nearby towns, so that we can do field site visits to basically imitate part of what we did in Refi Barichara, which is local people will receive the members of the community to visit each other's field sites, to visit each other's projects, and begin weaving them together the way we've been doing for 2 years in Barichara. And then we'll come out of this with some strategic discussions by what is forming as a core team for that bioregion about how they're going to move things forward. And then on Monday morning, Penny and I are in a series of calls with Pro Social World and with a group of people related to Ashoka Foundation, Common Land, several other foundations, a tapestry of planetary scale weaving that our friend Mila has been doing to prepare the space for several other global networks, the Royal Society for the Arts in the UK being one of them, IEEE, which is a planetary scale community of 400,000 engineers, which hosts all of the major peer-reviewed journals of the engineering field. She's been working with top people around knowledge commons and learning communities. And basically she's positioning to somewhere in March or April to bring wisdom communities from around the world. This is the work Mila is doing. Wisdom communities like the Kogis and other wisdom holders from around the world, together with high net worth individuals and families through a network of private family foundations that she advises, together with RSA, IEEE, Pro Social World, Ashoka Foundation, Common Land, and others to bring the funding and the resourcing to deploy what we're trying to do in the next year. And so that's Mila's work. Mila, as a master indigenous elder and weaver, is doing something sort of amazing. She was at Refi Barichara and role modeled how to break trauma cycles within our event, which was absolutely amazing. And she's holding that level of capacity for a planetary network. So that while Mila's doing that, we're going to collide with her as we're doing this work, because it all needs to be woven together. And the idea is in the next 2 weeks that Penny, Benji, and I are holding this space for the Colorado weaving to occur, with Benji holding the bioregional catalysts. But then after that, I'm going to come back to Barichara and pick up Elise. Penny's going to fly from Boulder to Chicago, and Elise and I are going to fly from Boulder to Chicago. We're going to arrive there together and spend time at my ex's family's house, at Elise's grandparents' house, without Jessica, without my ex. We're all going to go there and go to a bunch of amazing museums in Chicago. Take Elise to the Field Museum and the Aquarium, Planetarium, these world-class museums in Chicago, and do some family healing and weaving work after the divorce that Jessica and I haven't legalized yet, but that we've separated. And then we're going to go to Missouri over New Year's. And I see these as actually bioregional activations because we're going to be on Lake Michigan, right there on Lakeshore Drive. So we're going to be in the Great Lakes over Christmas and not too far from the Driftless area. And then we're going to drive down to the Ozark Plateau in Missouri, where I grew up. And I'm going to show Penny the bioregion of my birth and to let Elise visit with my brothers and sisters that she hasn't seen in almost 5 years. And we may do some bioregional work there, wink, wink, Roberta, if there's something we might do while we're in the Ozarks. And then we're going to either fly back to Columbia on January 6th, or we're going to go on to Toronto. And we're not sure which yet. And sometime in January, we're going to do some work on Toronto. And what I want to say about Toronto before inviting Brian to share briefly is that Toronto for me is a planetary heritage. Because for those of you who don't know, Canada has the world's largest forest. It's called the boreal forest. It actually spreads around the Arctic Circle. It goes across Eurasia as well. The boreal forest is about twice as large as the Amazon. It's the world's largest forest. It's the area where climate change is happening most quickly, is in the Arctic Circle. So there are huge, huge risks to this boreal forest. And the Great Lakes is basically a giant sponge and repository of the world's largest collection of fresh water, which is why north of Toronto is a network of thousands and thousands and thousands of lakes. And so Toronto is the drainage point, is a drainage point of the Great Lakes meeting the boreal forest. And so what I'd love to do is invite Brian to just speak for a minute about, like 1 or 2 minutes, Brian, about what you hope to achieve in Toronto so that we can see how all of this is coherent with the other activities.
Yes, thanks, Joe. We're really looking forward to you and Penny coming up. We've been laying the groundwork for a number of months now, and the Greater Toronto Bioregion, the current definition of its boundaries we took from a 1992 report by David Crombie called Regeneration, which laid the groundwork for the Green Belt, a massive large area around Toronto that's been designated and for not for urban development. So there's tremendous potential here. There's a lot of different things going on all over the place, different pockets of activity. And what we hope to do is link all these together to, first of all, connect with Joe and Penny and give them a big hug, because it's great to meet them in person, and then see what we can do. We're doing a lot of careful planning in advance of the visit in terms of how best to structure this, because we really want to use it to catalyze people, to bring people together. Susan and I and our team here, we do have some funding from a grant that we've managed to enlarge in scope a little bit here to incorporate this work. So we have a core team, so to speak, that's in place, that can hold this and that can carry it forward. So we're ideally positioned to do that. And we have connections that will allow us to make inroads quickly. Bringing people together, convening, catalyzing from Joe and Penny's visit. And we've already seen from Joe's Twitter that people are coming out and saying they'd like to be involved, which is great. There's some regenerative finance people that have come out that want to get together, and we'd love to facilitate that, because we have a lot of interest in that whole area. So we want to generate a lot of activity. We're planning a summit on April 3rd, possibly, and more activity after that. So there's a lot happening, and we really want to kickstart both cultural and ecological regeneration in the Greater Toronto Bioregion. So, and see how we can be of service to the landscape here, because it is a very special place, and we feel the responsibility to the world to catalyze people stewarding this in a better way over time.
Thank you, Brian. And just to draw attention that Jan added a comment in the chat that she was involved in some work that you guys may want to talk about. What I would love to do is just briefly name the context of what we're trying to do here in a little bit bigger way, so you can start to see why we're being so ambitious with all this travel. And that is, as many of you know, I don't pull any punches about the state of the planet and how many abrupt climate change tipping points we've already crossed, how many collapse patterns, cascading collapse patterns are about to occur. So I won't go into that now. I'll just say that Penny and I have been talking a lot about how we see a very short window of time to create human social fabrics, real human relationships, friendships between bioregions that can sustain what needs to happen for the ongoing period of the rest of the century. And just to name a couple of elements to see how this works, when we talked to Brian and Susan yesterday about Toronto, I immediately saw that some of the regenerative farming work being done in Toronto could benefit greatly from the biodynamic farming being done in Paonia. that we could just directly connect people to talk with each other. And then we could see that helping the drainage of the boreal forest into the Great Lakes would be connected through things like the Ogallala Aquifer, and then onto Paonia being part of the headwaters of the Colorado River, which brings water all the way through California into Baja California in Mexico, or at least it did. It no longer goes all the way to Mexico. It's been dry for like 25 years. And then here we are down here in the Northern Andes connecting things in South America that we can start to organize and think at continental scales and have these bioregions organizing themselves and creating learning exchanges that are truly continental in scale. And so I have a very ambitious objective. I don't know if it's realistic or not, but what I do know is that I think it's the minimum necessary, even if we can't achieve it, which is I think we need to engage a minimum of 100 bioregions within the next year. Minimum. I think that this absolutely must happen. And I think it's actually unlikely that it'll happen in some ways, and also very likely it'll happen in others. When I was with the Regenerative Communities Network in 2019, we were working with 16 bioregions, and 77 others found us within the span of 4 months and tried to join us. And we didn't have capacity to work with them. They were just there on their own doing their thing. So this idea of engaging 100 bioregions is not as crazy as it sounds. When there are probably 2,000 bioregions, depends on how you define them, but there are definitely more than hundreds. And that what our idea would be to create a patterning of relationships to help activate and onboard this coherence of landscape teams to build their own bioregional strategies and engagement while collaborating with others, and to engage 100 of them by the end of 2023. And the reason for this ambitious goal is that I simply think we do not have time left to do anything less with what's happening at the scale of the planet. And so I wanted to name that, not to go into a lot of detail about it, but to really stimulate the kind of thinking that I think is necessary for this to work, for what we're doing to actually work, which is for us to identify in our own ways which bioregions we're already a part of and how we can be helping them, and how to proactively signal to other bioregions that are ready to begin this process with us, to do this decentralized mycelial spreading of networks across the planet. Like I could see Jonathan Kabat, who's already part of Bioregional Activators, helping us connect into the Northern California work that's and the Klamath River and the related extended areas that's very much ripe for this. I could see the kind of work that Grace and I talked about, activating in parts of Spain, being very connected to this, and et cetera, et cetera. I could see us reaching across the waters to Rochester and to the other side of the Great Lakes with what Jonathan is starting to do. Just recognizing that we would not reach out into these places would reach for this network. And this network, with the decentralized governance and funding capacities we know we need to build, can actually mobilize resources into these places. And the tool builders within our network could bring tools to these places as they reach out for support to just become coherent in what they're doing while they maintain their own autonomy. So I wanted to name this bigger picture on today's call because we don't think that we'll have any other weekly community calls until January with all of the travel that we're going to be doing. But we wanted you to know that this push for these next 2 months of intense travel that Penny and I are doing is really meant to have enough engagement and experience during these next 2 months with all of the other tools and structures we're trying to put in place so that throughout the next year, we can actually engage 100 bioregions. And that doesn't mean that Penny and I personally go to all of them, but that the way we're doing this and the patterning and the logic of it becomes replicated and imitated in other places as people see what we're doing. And I'm already working with a group that wants to do fundraising for the network of projects in Barichara. They're creating a fundraising strategy for raising $300,000 for Barichara, while also trying to bring it to how do we do this to the other bioregions, so that when we arrive into a place like Toronto or Paonia, we'd love to be able to bring financial resources, expertise, tools, support spaces like bioregional catalysts, what Benji already does, these kinds of things to just help them organize themselves more quickly and find resources and supports more quickly, so that this network can grow very rapidly into a learning ecosystem. And so that's the vision that I wanted to share, the bigger picture view. And I'd love to just open it up for any comments or questions for the rest of the time that we have today. So please raise your hand if you have any comments or questions. Jan, please.
Yeah, no, just that it strikes a chord with me because this is the topic of onboarding, right? How to bring people into the space, and it's one of the main things that I've been trying to occupy myself with. So I'd love to just keep that in mind if you have thoughts, or if there's any meetings and you are not sure that I got the message that the meeting is about or has a certain focus here on that, make sure maybe I'm really keen on exactly that, right? If we had a welcome package, you could go out to new people and say, by the way, here's our welcome package. It consists of all of these guides and information and how to go to the next step. That is going to increase the speed of bringing them these communities online. Anyway, that's just my comment.
Yeah, spot on. Hell yes. High fives and an amen. This relates to what Jan had suggested earlier. I think it relates to what Benji is prototyping with his evolving use of bioregional catalysts. And so those are already two people you could immediately talk to, as well as Penny, who's trying to figure out how to hold the coherence of our communication and coordination. So Jan, if you want to speak with any of the three of them, knowing
Right,
that Penny and I are about to become unavailable, so maybe Benji, and if you want to talk to Jan about what her idea was, just reach out and start a conversation and let us know how we can help.
I'll make a note of that. And Benji, just FYI, I had a call with Timo Basendau yesterday, and we discussed how we can help each other on the technical level, building our apps. So I think that is because you're working with Timo very closely as well, right?
I'm not actually working with Timo. I've met Timo, and I hope the same at the, yeah. I'm not working in the tooling, more the support structure, ongoing support structures for activating bioregions. Yeah.
I'll make a note. I'll reach out both to Jan and Benji and whoever else is interested to just have a little brainstorming session.
Yeah, and in the other direction, if anyone wants to reach out to Jan, please do so. And just let us know, as Penny and I are trying to hold coherence of the field, just let us know how we can help. If you need us to create a structure, communicate something, just to tell you what's going on so that you can design into the context, just let us know. We're here to help. Grace, please.
There's just a few things that you said that kind of reminded me. My training is in, I don't know how to call this, but centralized leadership. And it feels like that at this moment, you and Penny are a bottleneck in a number of things. And so just reach out to me if you want to see how we can accelerate the process of decentralizing leadership, so that, because there's no reason why this meeting wouldn't go on just because you guys are preoccupied, except that there's just not a structure for that. So yeah, I'd like to help you create those structures.
Yes, please. We would love that, Grace. Let's find a time to talk about it really soon. Gail, please.
I just want to let you know, I put a document in the chat that I created for my work partner, Laura Kim Joyner, to bring with her. She's going to Nicaragua later this week for about a couple of weeks, and she's introducing the idea of having Joe and Penny be invited to visit them in Ometepe Island to start bioregional activities there. And feel free to borrow from what I wrote there if you do put together anything, or if you want. I have to be careful not to overwhelm myself with too much stuff, but I might be interested in helping create this welcome package or whatever. Also, I want to just point out that some of us have been chatting from New York about trying to hook the Hudson Valley region into this somehow. None of us seem to know anyone directly who's working on the bigger picture. Some people seem to know like individual farmers and such. So I'm feeling unsure how to get this going, but if it was Day, Jen, Darren, Grace, anyone, if you want to get in touch with me, I'll put my email again in here. I'm old fashioned, I use email. Or if you want to chat on Bioregional Activators, let me know, because I would love to at least get something started, getting this work coming to downstate New York. I know Jonathan has got upstate New York going, but we need downstate New York involved as well.
Thank you, Gail. And just as a reminder, or for those who don't know, when I was with the Regenerative Communities Network, the Hudson Valley hub of the network was maintained by Kevin Irby, who goes by the name Kirby. He was the one that was mapping out the supply chains of the regenerative agriculture space and community markets and such. So Kevin Irby is the point of contact for who was mapping the Hudson Valley as a regenerative economy. And I haven't talked, Kevin Irby, IRBY, and he goes by the name Kirby. But he's worked with impact finance and investment groups in Manhattan and then upstate in the Hudson Valley. I haven't talked to him in a few years, but I could, so it's a cold contact, but I could try to connect you if that's helpful. Sav.
I have to hop on the hour, so just want to say thanks, everyone. But so a really quick question for the topic of onboarding that Jan brought up and the like bioregional passport conversation. Which workflow would that of the three that you identified makes the most sense for that conversation to live and be focused in?
I think for now I'd put that in the tool space because we're unclear. We can feel that it relates to the others, but we're unclear how it does. So I would just start there until we figure it out.
Yeah, makes sense to me. All right, thanks, guys.
And just message me about lunch and let's meet up. Thanks, Sav. Are there any other questions, comments, or offers? Including if someone wants to host these calls during the time Penny and I are unavailable to take the prompt that Grace offered us. If anyone wants to host those, we're happy to let it continue. Just dropping that back into the field. Mitty, please.
I'm happy to manage the Zoom tech part, but as far as planning conversation, I mean, part of a team, if we, Grace, you want to help us put together a team to do that.
Yeah, I think Grace had to go.
But anyway, well, I'll make a note. I can share that in the Telegram group.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm happy to make sure the technology part is maintained.
Yeah, it's really if there's someone who wants to host these calls for the next few weeks. So if anyone does reach out to Penny and me, or one of the, maybe reach out to Penny, make it really easy. Anyone would like to host these calls, reach out to Penny. And if not, then we'll just start them again in the new year. Mitty, please.
I want to name how heartened I feel, not just by your map, Joe, but also by the energy of this conversation. I remember a couple of years ago, sort of early into my life in Earth Regenerators, feeling the sense of, well, America's doomed, the US is doomed, where do I go to? Shall I join my kids in Australia? Shall I go back to Corsica? Shall I join my daughter in Ireland? I just feel so strongly that the US is a key piece. If we can save enough of the US, we actually will save the world, just because of what energetically the US has already taken and can contribute to the rest of the world. So I thank you, everybody who lightens my heart.
Yeah, and we can also bend that thinking and say, the US may still go away, but the North American continent is of fundamental importance. And just recognizing that in a way, it's like, if you haven't read it, Mitty, there's an amazing book by Tim Flannery called The Eternal Frontier, which is the ecological evolutionary history of North America after the extinction of the dinosaurs. So 63 million years of evolutionary history of North America, which shows you why that continent is so important to the planet. Just like if you look at the Andes as biogeography and the Amazon and see why South America is so important for agroecology and biodiversity, North America is very important for its landscape structures and its 4-season cycle, its freshwater biota, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very, very important continent. And just it's like to really appreciate and value these things. So The Eternal Frontier is an amazing book by Tim Flannery if you want to just fall in love with the continent. It helped me fall in love with North America in a completely geologic and evolutionary way. Ricardo,
I fell in love with North America from the land. Now you're telling me why I fell in love with it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And Ricardo, siga por favor.
Gracias. Thanks, Joe, and everyone here. I'm going to visit the Provincia Guanentino, the province where Mogotes and Barichara are placed, for the second week of December. So what I want to share here is I'm traveling confident that we can begin weaving this bioregional regeneration, growth and establish different places in the bioregion, into the bioregion. Although I don't have any structured plan, I just talked to Carlos in Barichara, and there's this activity, this archaeological hike. I don't know if it's important to give it some structure, or just, leave that, happen and things emerge. But I don't know if Joe, if you can, just guide me with somebody else who can help me out in Barichara.
Yeah, I think the easiest thing to do would be to ask Carlos if he would send a message to the WhatsApp group for the Territorial Foundation. And just ask him if he would organize to host any kind of conversations that would be helpful for regenerating Mogotes alongside what we're doing in Barichara. Because this is something that I'm going to talk about tomorrow in the Barichara updates call, is we had 2 absolutely transformational days of workshops last weekend for creating the bioregional governance experience of the Territorial Foundation in Barichara. And I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow. And so we are doing deep spiritual work and trauma healing work and governance work and funding work and landscape regeneration work all together within the Territorial Foundation of Barichara. And I actually thought that I was going to spend the time today talking about that, but I actually think what we just talked about was what this meeting needed to be about. But in the Barichara and Beyond call tomorrow, I'll be talking at more depth about it. And then it'll be recorded and shared, of course, if you can't make it at 11 a.m. Central for the call. But the reason I say this for you, Ricardo, is that we are getting to a place of much deeper integration between all of our projects in Barichara. And one thing, for example, one thing that came up from Emilce at Fundación Ojo de Agua is how to bring the Andes cosmovision that spread across many different indigenous cultures of the Northern Andes to help us create a governance system that is indigenous here, using the Territorial Foundation to create it. And so this depth of connection to the landscape is very profound, and it will very naturally connect with Mogotes. So I think that just asking Carlos if he would invite people from the Territorial Foundation group in WhatsApp, which is called Tejiendo Fondos Semillas, but he'll know what it is if you don't remember, that ask if he would organize like a lunch or a meeting, some way of organizing a conversation with the local people in the community that are doing this work. Because that's how it would, even if it was just a 2-hour conversation, that level of holding the space would really, really help. And it would be easy to organize.
Okay, thanks. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, so So this is another thing that's happening is here in Colombia, we're weaving across territories to create bioregional fabrics within Colombia itself. But that's its own big topic of conversation. What I want to invite us to do in closing is to just have a moment of body connection before we close, which is I'd love for everyone to just take a moment and relax and sit into your body. If you feel comfortable, close your eyes and just take one really big, deep breath in. The earth is organizing her humans, and out, I don't have to worry about collapse. All right, so one more time, breathe in. The earth is organizing her humans, and breathe out. I don't have to worry about collapse. This is so important. We cannot stop this collapse. It needs to go away. The global system must die. We must hospice and love the death of the global system. And we are organizing right now. I just wanted to name this. It's really, really happening. And it's happening through us. And these last 70 minutes of conversation we've just had shows how we are really doing it. Notice how every comment and every question was connected to action and connected to collaboration. We are really doing this. We're really, really doing it. And the work of the next 12 or 13 months is going to be essential. For those of you who know what I talked about in my book, The Design Pathway for Regenerating Earth, we are manifesting it. You don't even have to read the book, just help manifest it. We're actually doing it. And embracing collapse is essential for being able to do this work. We have to know what to stop trying to fix and know what to focus on. And Will, I'm so glad you're here, even though you didn't talk, because I feel the Ogallala sitting right in between the Great Lakes and the Rocky Mountains and where I'm going to be in the Ozarks. So I just feel your presence. For all of you who don't know, Will is trying to help transform industrial agriculture from Texas outward into the Ogallala Aquifer, which is it the largest aquifer in the world? If it's not, it's one of them. But it's certainly very strategic.
It's the largest in the United States, largest in North America, and maybe the largest freshwater in the world, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, it irrigates about a fifth to a quarter of American agriculture, beef, corn, cotton, wheat, and it's all, there is zero intact prairie. There is no healthy biome. And we're talking from like the Permian Basin, kind of mid Texas, all the way up to the Dakotas. I mean, the heart of America. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Penny and I flew over it on our way to Denver when we were going there a few weeks ago, and I made some public comments about it, about how destroyed the Great Plains are. And so just know that water is what is connecting us all. And that should be obvious, looking at the Great Lakes with Toronto, looking at Paonia with the North Fork of the Gunnison River connecting into the Colorado, looking at the Salish Sea around the San Juan Islands and Vancouver Island, looking at the rivers of California coming out of the Sierra Nevadas and out of the coastal range of California. Here in the Andes, it's rivers, it's rivers, it's rivers. And so,
and snow and glaciers.
Yeah, and the glaciers are mostly fucked up north because of the rate of warming and the time delays in the global climate system. So we've got to get this water recharging into the ground everywhere that we can for what we're no longer going to have up in the mountains. Colorado's probably okay with snowpack relative to places like Peru, where like Cusco is about to not have any water and tens of millions of people are going to be in lots of fights with each other. The Potamos of Colombia, which are these very special ecosystems that are where all the rivers form in the northern Andes, are in danger. And we're talking about continental scale things, but the way we do the continental scale is learning to manage our own landscapes. That's how we do it. And we can see it. Can't you just feel the concreteness of this? This is really doable, at least in a conceptual way. And so that's why I said, breathe in that Gaia is organizing her humans, and breathe out that we don't have to worry about collapse. We have to embrace collapse and ride a really big tsunami. And that doesn't mean it's going to be nice, because it's not going to be nice, but we're on the ride and it started. And I see this next year as really being critical. So if you see patterning of what we are trying to do here, you know, you do not need anyone's permission to just take the lead and do this. As Grace was saying, we need to build more ways of decentralized leadership here. So just naming that. I'll share this video with everyone in Bioregional Activators. We should talk about how much we make all of this more broadly public and accessible soon, just because we want to figure out how to invite more people to participate in a coherent way. I think we're close to knowing how to do that, but it might still be another month before we really know how, just because of the disruptions to our flow with all the travel. But we're moving toward there very quickly. So for any frustration that's held around how do we invite people in and how do we do that, if you have people you think should be here, send Penny or me a message and we'll add them. But we're getting close to being ready to actually do this as patterns, so that it can be more open and everyone can do it. We just wanted to mindfully hold it closed to tend it until we know what it is. That's the only reason that we've done this. And so we're very close to being able to open it up and let a lot of people in. So with that, I just want to thank everyone for all of your attention and care on the call, to use all of the tools that Penny mentioned, you know, the Bioregional Activators, Mighty Networks, the Telegram group for sharing announcements, reaching out to each other one-on-one, reaching out to us, joining the Bioregional Catalyst calls that Benji's hosting. Just, you know, let's try and make this coherent so that it can scale. And thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to the next time I talk to all of you will be that I'm actually in the same room with Penny. That'll make me happier. And onward we go. So isn't this crazy? Thank you, everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Crazy.